Unveiled, 3 sinister true Christmas horror stories that will haunt your holiday nights forever. Jenna's home stood unnervingly still beneath the weight of the fresh snowfall. In the cookie-cutter suburbs just outside of Chicago, those twinkling Christmas lights seemed to flicker with an eerie sentience, taunting her as if they knew the hollowness hiding inside her cheerful decorations. She brushed off the unease creeping into her spine, focusing instead on creating a joyful Christmas for her 10-year-old son, Ethan. "It'll be perfect," she whispered to herself, but the nagging whispers from the street were always just behind her thoughts, dogs barking at night and shadowy figures lurking in the corners of her life. As she ran her fingers over each ornament, lovingly hung on her artificial tree, she found herself trembling. Were those sounds real? The light crackling and dimming, catching her breath but letting resentment build up just below the surface. The cost of creating a happy holiday felt like a race against time, and as night fell, the dim glow of her home masked the encroaching darkness just beyond her walls. Then the gifts began to arrive. Each one was an unsettling surprise: a tarnished locket, an old-school photo, items that clawed at memories Jenna had buried in the rushing noise of motherhood. Who sent them? Nothing made sense, and the weight of questions began to gnaw at her. On a particularly long shift at the retail store, Jenna came home exhausted, only to find a silhouette standing silently outside her window. The figure was there, watching, and when she squinted, her stomach twisted into a knot. Her heart raced as she stumbled back from the glass. Was it paranoia taking root or something more sinister? She shook off the strange feeling, dismissing it as just exhaustion, but sleep turned into a restless cycle of nightmares. That night, when Sanjay went missing, a kind-hearted neighbor whose laughter filled the air, Jenna felt the air grow thick with an electric fear. She sought comfort in the local police but left feeling even more unsettled as their dismissive chuckles echoed in her mind. Just another neighborhood scare. Alone and helpless, Jenna sat in the flickering light of soft decorations, realizing the thread of unease had woven itself into her life. Before we continue, I need to tell you something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to their system and many people are missing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and select all notifications so you don't miss future videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. As she found herself digging into the town's past, she stumbled upon old newspaper clippings, each revelation darker than the last. Christmas rituals aimed at appeasing spirits, dressed in sinister intentions. A cold sweat beaded on her brow. The smiles of her neighbors, once comforting, felt now like masks hiding ghastly truths. The jogger in the red beanie waved, but it sent chills racing through her. What were they really hiding? On Christmas Eve, the joyous sounds from the kitchen morphed into an unsettling cacophony that twisted her stomach into knots. As Jenna lay awake, horror hit in waves. Disturbing scratching at her front door clawed against her sanity, drowning her in dread. Something was out there. Heart racing, she finally dared to open the door. The hinges screamed as she pulled it ajar, and she found an unmarked package resting against the frostbitten doormat. Breathless and on edge, her gaze shifted from the package to the shadows creeping up behind her. Was it the warmth of Christmas, or the icy grip of darkness silently closing in, lurking just out of sight? As fear coiled around her heart, she clutched that package, uncertain if she could protect her family or if something far more sinister had already breached the fortress of her home. Jenna's hand trembled as she lifted the unmarked package. The weight of it felt wrong, a heavy omen pressing down on her chest. She stepped back inside her narrow hallway, closing the door with a soft click that seemed too loud in the oppressive quiet. Shadows writhed along the walls, and she shuddered, feeling as if they were reaching for her. The lights flickered again, and she flinched, the room plunging briefly into darkness. An uneasy sense of being watched washed over her. Was it just the chill of the winter night, or were those eyes lurking just beyond her front window? She forced herself to breathe, to focus on the package in her hands. It was wrapped in plain brown paper and tied with a dark twine that looked as if it had been snipped from something else. Her mind spiraled, grappling with the question, who would send her something so unsettling? Mom? Ethan's small voice sliced through the dread, pulling her from her thoughts. The innocence in his tone tugged at her heartstrings, reminding her why she fought so hard to make this Christmas special, even as darkness crept at the edges of her life. She turned to him, managing a stiff smile. "It's nothing, sweetheart. Just a surprise." Ethan peered at the package, his eyes sparkling with curiosity. "Can we open it?" Jenna hesitated. "Not right now, buddy. Let us put it under the tree for later." She quickly shoved it under the tree, almost as if to hide it away from the flickering, watchful lights that danced around. The evening rolled on, filled with forced laughter and fake smiles. She busily prepared snacks, all the while glancing toward that cursed package, its presence lurking at the edge of her mind. Every sound outside made her jump, carolers' laughter feeling like an intrusion, a mere backdrop to her growing panic. The clock ticked ominously, edging closer to midnight. Christmas morning was drawn nearer, but a far more malevolent presence seemed to stretch across the night, ready to pounce. With Ethan nestled in bed, dreaming of sugar plums and joy, she felt the weight on her shoulders grow heavier. It was time to confront the package. With slow, hesitant steps, she approached the tree. The lights glowed like glimmers of hope, but the oppressive weight of dread hung thick in the air around the package. She knelt beside it, fingers hovering just above the rough paper. The air felt charged, burdened with expectations of ghostly visitors, of misdeeds yet to be uncovered. Suddenly, a loud crash shattered the silence, sending her heart racing. From the window came the violent sound of breaking glass. Jenna jumped back, adrenaline surging as she turned to face whatever horror awaited her. The shadows had come to life, creeping along the walls, dark fingers stretching toward her. She fought the urge to retreat, instead reaching for the unopened parcel with shaky hands, trembling with the adrenaline coursing through her. What was that? Ethan's whisper echoed through the hall, sweet and innocent yet laced with palpable fear. "Stay in your room, buddy," she shouted, her voice trembling as she tore into the package, as though it held the answers, the release from the dread suffocating her. Inside lay a small wooden box, intricately carved with unsettling designs of faces twisted in agony. Jenna's breath hitched as she opened it. A chilling wind swept through the house, snuffing out the holiday lights, plunging everything into darkness. The chilling presence surrounded her, seeping into her bones. Then, from within the box, a soft, haunting melody began to play, and the sound was unlike anything she'd heard before. Each note felt like a calling, beckoning her, luring her deeper into the night. Her heart hammered as she felt a shadow move behind her eyes, glaring through the blackness. In the stillness, Jenna's courage flickered like a candle on the verge of blowing out. She had unleashed something beyond her control, something that might very well consume her whole. As the sinister melody filled the room, she realized, some gifts were never meant to be opened, but what nightmare waited just beyond the shadows? Jenna's heart thundered in her chest, drowning out the haunting melody that wrapped around her like an icy shroud. The shadows crept closer, each deepening corner of the room whispering dark secrets. She held the box tightly, as if it were a lifeline or a curse. A flicker of movement caught her eye. There, in the darkness, something shifted, a form just out of reach of the light's waning glow. Her instincts screamed at her to run, to escape the encroaching dread. Yet, paralyzed, she stood transfixed, unable to tear her gaze from the void that pulsed with something more than just darkness. Ethan. She remembered, her breath hitching. Clenching the box, she turned on her heel, flying down the dim corridor toward her son's room. "Mom!" His voice, tiny and terrified, called out through the suffocating quiet. She burst into his room, plunging herself into the safety of his innocence. Ethan sat up in bed, wide-eyed, clutching his favorite plush toy. Mom, what's happening?" His whispered tremor pulled her closer. "Shoo!" She almost pleaded, pressing her finger to her lips, though her own terror lurked just beneath the surface. "Stay here. Just stay quiet." The pale glow of the moon seeped through his window, casting ghostly light across the room. She glanced back, heart racing. The melody still trailed her, eerie and seductive, weaving into the very fabric of the night. It coaxed her, promising secrets, unveiling truths best left hidden. But what truth? Jenna couldn't shake the feeling she was on the brink of something horrific, and every instinct screamed for her to flee. "Mom!" A deeper voice rumbled from the corner of the room, low and menacing. Her blood froze. At the edge of the dim light stood a figure, partially obscured by shadows. A familiar silhouette. Her husband, Mark, died 2 years ago. Yet here he was, hauntingly real, his eyes dark hollows echoing despair. "Mark?" Jenna gasped, her heart breaking and racing at once. "Is it really you?" He stepped closer, the light glinting off his features, but they were wrong, distorted, twisted in an expression she could not comprehend. "You shouldn't have opened it, Jenna." His voice was a gravelly whisper, as though it belonged to a grave. "No!" she cried, stepping back as the walls seemed to close in around her. "This isn't real." But the melody wrapped tight, luring her deeper. She clutched Ethan's toy, feeling its warmth against her skin, grounding her to reality. "Ethan, hold on to me," she shouted, and he scrambled out of bed, rushing toward her. Suddenly, the window shattered once more, and a gust of wind billowed through, extinguishing the last remnant of light. Panic surged through Jenna as she felt the darkness coalesce, groping for them, pressing against her skin. "Mommy!" Ethan's voice had turned into a wail, a cry as bright as it was shaken. She felt her resolve waver. What if she couldn't protect him? What if they became lost in this terrible night? But somewhere in that murkiness, the melody continued, reverberating in her ears, calling. In the pitch black, Jenna's eyes adjusted enough to see the box still lying on the floor, glowing ominously, the faces twisted in agony. "Get back!" she shouted to the shadowy figure. "You're not him." As the creature lunged, she grasped the wooden box, her mind racing in the darkness. The melody rose, sharp and urgent, and Jenna had to make a choice to confront her past or protect her son from what was clawing to break free. Ethan shuddered beside her, and she realized this was not just another Christmas. The stakes had never been higher. In one desperate breath, she spoke into the night. "What do you want?" And the darkness responded, a chorus of anguished whispers creeping through the air. But did she dare listen? Or would the answer consume her whole? What awaited her could either salvage their Christmas or bury them in eternal night. The shadows churned, writhing with an energy of their own, and Jenna felt the suffocating grip of fear constrict around her throat. She couldn't see Ethan's face through the blackness, but she could feel his small body trembling beside her. "Stay close," she hissed, though her own voice was a brittle whisper. Mark's silhouette loomed larger, an unsettling shadow drawing nearer. "You opened the box," he said again, his voice echoing off the walls, morphing into something monstrous. "Now it wants a debt to be paid." "What debt?" Jenna shouted back, desperate for clarity amongst the abyss of confusion. "Your past is long overdue," he replied, his face distorting into a mask of anguish. Shadows flickered behind him, a grotesque parade of faces, each contorted, each crying out in silent despair. Ethan clutched her leg, his small grip igniting her protective instincts. "Mommy! Please!" His voice broke, a sound like shattering glass piercing through the thick fabric of night. She felt her heart race, thundering as loud as the storm raging outside. The wind howled, but it was nothing compared to the agony of those lingering shadows. "No!" Jenna screamed as she took a step back, dragging Ethan with her. But there was nowhere to retreat. The walls felt like a coffin, squeezing her, and the darkness seemed to pulse with life, alive and eager to feast on their terror. Abruptly, the faces in the dark lunged, stretching out unnatural hands that clawed at the air, grasping yearning. Their whispered demands melded into the haunting melody, creating a symphony of despair that masked her thoughts. "We want to be free," they hissed, crawling closer, hungry for escape. "Leave us alone," she begged, clutching the box tighter, a futile attempt to ward them off. As her fingers grazed the lid, a heat surged through her. The glow intensified, illuminating the room in a sickly green light that rendered the twisted faces clearer. Eyes large, mouths agape in silent screams. She recognized them now. Friends lost, forgotten family members, all trapped within that cursed wood. "Mommy. I'm scared." Ethan's fear was palpable, a razor piercing her already frayed nerves. Jenna turned, locking eyes with her son, the lifeline she desperately needed. "We'll get through this, I promise." Yet, the melody wove tighter around her, binding her to the truth buried deep in the box. With every whispered lament, memories she wished she could forget clawed their way back to the surface, memories of loss and pain that took shape in the darkness swirling around them. "I'm sorry," Jenna sobbed, as the shadows crept closer, reaching for the box. "I never meant I." The crashing sound of shattering glass pierced her thoughts, and she felt a sudden gust sweep through, throwing open the curtains. The moonlight erupted into the room like a harbinger of doom, illuminating the horror in stark contrast. Jenna blinked, momentarily blinded by the brightness, but when her vision cleared, the shadows seemed to shrink, retreating like a tide pulling away from shore, but the faces in the shadows transformed into something worse, angry specters driven by vengeance, their cries rising into a crescendo. "You will pay," they zealed, their pounding anger crashing against her senses. Jenna gripped the box close to her heart, feeling its warmth pulsate like a heartbeat. Somehow, she knew the power it held could either seal their fate or save them from the nightmares clawing at their heels. "What do you need from me?" she shouted, squeezing her eyes shut against the chaos. With that single question, silence washed over the room, thick and heavy. Even the wind outside stilled, as if the world itself waited for a response. And then, in the oppressive quiet, a voice whispered back, clear and echoing, "Return what was taken, and you may save what remains." Jenna gasped. What had been taken? The haunting glimmer of her past unspooled in her mind, and dread clawed at her heart. She had to decide: betray her own recollections and face the shadows, or risk losing everything she held dear. "Ethan, hold on tight," she urged, her voice rising in strength. Little did she know, the true terror was yet to be revealed. What could possibly resurface from the depths of her past? And would they escape the night's grasp or fall victim to its insatiable hunger? The stillness of the room shattered as Jenna raced to find answers. The weight of the box felt unbearable in her hands, its warmth contrasting the frigid air that surrounded them. Shadows broiled against the walls, but Jenna focused her energy inward, searching the chaotic maze of her memories. What had been taken? And how could she give it back? "Mommy." Ethan's voice trembled as he peeked around her leg, eyes wide with terror. "Just stay close." Jenna clenched her jaw, forcing calmness into her words. Every instinct screamed at her to run, but the box pulled her in, a magnetic force urging her to confront whatever lay within. The air thickened, smothering her like an invisible shroud. The shadows shifted, their anguished faces growing clearer, their mouths formed silent screams. They were hungry for recognition. Hunger turned to anger as they clawed closer, shrieks feeding off her rising panic. "What do you want from me?" she barked, desperation creeping in. A deep voice echoed from the darkness, reverberating through her bones. "Your truth holds the key, remember." The word sliced through her mind. Truth. Jenna's thoughts spiraled, grappling with events long buried. Memories surged forth, a flood of laughter, warmth, and then, like a knife twisting, betrayal and loss. The Christmas her family shattered came roaring back, the year she lost her sister, the grief that consumed her. Could it really be? She hesitated, recalling the last time they were all together. Carols sung, laughter shared. It ended that day. "I should have protected her," she whispered, self-loathing twisting in her gut. Soft, almost tender, the shadows recoiled at her admission, drawing back momentarily. But just as quickly, they surged forward, a tidal wave of dark energy drawn to her pain. You can't escape your past. They howled, the spectral faces locked in torment. In that moment, Jenna's resolve hardened. No more. She shouted, as if the declaration alone could chase away the darkness. I can forgive myself. I wasn't to blame. The room shook, as whispers of doubt clashed with the raging cries of the phantoms. An uneasy silence followed. Shadows lingered, then began to morph, shifting into familiar faces. Her sister's smile, radiant and bright, suddenly twisted with rage. You forgot me. It cried, drowning Jenna in guilt. Ethan, hold on to the box. Jenna ordered, feeling more of its energy pulsate, urging her to dig deeper. I'll find a way to set you all free. The light from the box flickered again, casting eerie shadows that danced wildly around the room. Jenna could hear chanting now, an insistent drone that filled her ears and drowned out rational thought. It called to her, wrapping around her consciousness and squeezing tightly. Remember, the whispers cooed like seductive sirens, pulling her back into the moment of loss. Each beat of her heart felt like a countdown, each thump echoing with dread. The wind howled anew, a wailing beast begging to be set loose. In a moment of clarity, Jenna gripped her son tighter. The walls of her mind cracked under pressure, and she remembered the last thing her sister did, the promise made to always protect her. I'll set you free. Jenna declared, resolve morphing into defiance. Suddenly, the shadows surged forward, rage palpable in the air. You cannot change what was taken. They roared, the darkness clawing and shrieking, hungry for vengeance, but Jenna stood tall, refusing to let fear swallow her up. She slammed the box to the ground, feeling power radiate outward. I will never forget you. She screamed into the abyss, and as the shadows howled in fury, her memories began to twist and transform, and she understood. Freedom meant facing her past, not escaping it. When the dust settled, silence enveloped the room. Ethan's grip tightened, uncertain, even as Jenna felt the air shift, heavy with lingering questions. Had she truly faced her demons? And just as she thought a sliver of peace might be found, the box emitted an unsettling creak, something inside stirring suddenly, waiting for release. What now? Jenna whispered, dread pooling in her stomach. What would come next from the depths of her memories? Would she emerge victorious, or would the darkness reclaim her forever? The room pulsed with a new energy, an unsettling hum that flowed from the box outwards. Shadows danced erratically along the walls, moving with a mind of their own. Ethan stumbled back, his small frame shaking in confusion, staring at the box as if it were a living thing. Jenna knelt, heart racing, hands trembling with both fear and determination. What had she done? The force of her declaration felt like a stone dropped into a still lake, rippling outwards. The silence trembled under the weight of anticipation, the air heavy with secrets ready to spill. Stay behind me, Ethan. She urged, pushing him closer to the wall, wanting to shield him from whatever was about to tear through that thin veil between worlds. With each heartbeat, the box vibrated, its wood creaking and groaning like it was alive. The darkness pressed in, thick and oily, while the whispers grew louder, rising into a cacophony. Face it, Jenna. They yelled. You can never escape. Her mind raced, recalling the echoes of laughter mingled with cries of despair. The power of those memories surged, threatening to drown her again. But she couldn't succumb. Not now. You think you can control me with this? She scoffed, her voice steadier than she felt. You are nothing but whispers. The box rattled violently, and gingerly, Jenna reached out, hands closing around the latch. It offered a shocking burst of heat, as if resisting her touch. The shadows shrieked, swirling with more fury, pushing against the door of her past she was ready to open. In a sudden burst of courage, Jenna flung the lid open. A blinding light flooded the room, sending the shadows reeling back, their vengeful screams turning into hisses. They cloaked themselves against the walls, trying to shield their dark forms from the light. Then, muffled in the brilliance, voices broke through the wail, familiar, cherished. Jenna leaned in closer, heart pounding. "Come back to me," she cried, reaching into the abyss of the box. What emerged wasn't a familiar face but something even more sinister, a writhing mass of memories wrapped in contradiction. Images of her sister, laughing and playing, intertwined with unhappy moments, the confrontation, the day it all fell apart. Jenna staggered backward, overcome by the deluge. The box trembled with energy, shadows swirling faster, battling among themselves, and it felt like time itself shifted and bent. The walls of the room shuddered, plaster cracking under the weight of regret and sorrow. "Ethan!" she shouted, feeling panic clawing at her throat as the darkness erupted. Tendrils of shadow shot toward them, grasping and clawing, searching for the deep-seated remorse buried for so long. "Hold on to me." But even as she reached for her son, a shadow engulfed him, pulling him into its depths, his small figure swallowed whole. "Mommy!" His scream pierced through the darkness, a sound steeped in pure, unadulterated terror. Jenna felt the air freeze around her, each breath becoming a struggle. She could feel the icy fingers of despair creeping around her heart. No! Not him! Desperation surged, igniting a primal fury within her. She stepped forward, enveloped in the frantic energy of the box's many ghosts, ready to fight for her son. "You want my truth? You'll have it!" she yelled, feeling her spirit ignite, but as she reached into the light again, it flickered dangerously, and something dark from within began to seep out, writhing tendrils that promised only pain and anguish. Jenna was losing control. "Ethan! I'm coming!" she cried out, eyes wide with horror, as chaos ensued, the room spiraling into a vortex of memory and menace. Then, with a deafening roar, the shadows roared as they witnessed the releasing truth. They began to uncoil as if coaxed by her words. But what would that mean for Jenna, and what price must she pay to save her son? In that chilling moment, the boundaries of love and sacrifice blurred. The room spun, and as her vision blurred into the brightness, she understood one thing: the shadows would not go quietly. And in the heart of the storm, new whispers beckoned from the box, a voice soaked in familiarity, yet twisted grotesquely by time. "Let me show you what you've lost." A single thought hammered in her mind. Could she face the truth hidden there, and what would it cost her? Jenna fought against the oppressive darkness, her breath quickening with each flicker of light emanating from the box. The air was charged, the temperature dropping as the shadows coalesced, thick enough to reach out and grab her if she allowed her focus to waver. "Ethan!" she cried again, her voice raw, desperation clawing at her throat. Each second stretched, pulling at the fragile seams of her sanity. A whisper echoed at the edges of her consciousness, taunting her from the abyss, threading through the cacophony of wails and cries. "Let me show you what you've lost." It was the voice of her sister. Jenna's heart stuttered. In that twisted moment, the shadows blurred into an ethereal silhouette that resembled the girl she once knew. Memories washed over her, both tender and searing laughter that echoed through summer afternoons, the warmth of whispered secrets, but also the frigid reminder of betrayal and heartbreak. "No!" she shouted, shaking her head, as if denying the arrival of the past could erase it. The shadows tightened around her, writhing with hungry urgency. They were drawn not just to her fears, but to her pain. They wanted her to succumb. She stepped closer to the box, forcing herself to look at the contorted mass that represented every lost connection, every regret. "You're just a part of me. I want to let you take him." Her voice cracked, trembling under the weight of her convictions. The light pulsed, flickering like a candle ready to sputter out in a storm. Against it, the shadows hissed like serpents, the whispers turning into mounting rage. "Let it go, Jenna. You can't hold on to him." Grasping the edges of the box, she leaned in, feeling something unexpectedly cool against her fingers, the first tangible thing in an atmosphere choked with despair. She could sense Ethan's presence beyond the fabric of shadows, a fragile thread of connection tethering them. I will find you. I will bring you back. As she cried out, the box burst with an explosion of light, scattering the darkness like ashes in the wind. The shadows screeched, flailing in desperation as the brilliance forced them back, each shimmering tendril revealing grotesque faces twisted by anguish. Jenna staggered, her mind decoding the torment reflected in their eyes, the collective suffering of those lost to their own demons. "Mommy." Ethan's voice somehow threaded through the chaos, unwavering and clear. A scent of his shampoo hung faintly in the air, reminding her of simpler days, comfort tinged with dread. Ruthlessly, Jenna fought through the fog of memories as they gnawed at her resolve. With a roar that mirrored her own, a wave of energy surged from the center of her being, pushing against the dark, a fierce declaration of love challenging the shadows. "This ends now." The room vibrated, and something within the box quaked violently. Tendrils reached for her but she remained unyielding, channeling the love she had for her son as a weapon against the inevitable despair. As she pulled, a figure materialized in the blinding light. Ethan. He reached for her, eyes wide with fear and trust as he began to emerge from the clutches of darkness, inching toward her as shadows burst apart around them, yet even as she stretched out her hand, the shadows began to hiss in a language that felt like ice on her skin, one that sliced deep and promised loss. "You can't have him, Jenna. You will pay dearly. Your own heart is your worst enemy." Just as their hands brushed, a crackling pulse echoed, a shuddering cry that reverberated through the walls. Jenna felt the box tremble violently, the very foundation of her world cracking. "No!" she screamed, desperate to pull him into her embrace. In that moment of dread, the harsh realization struck her. The box was not merely a trap, it was a conduit, a gathering place for all the pain she carried. Could she save him without being consumed herself? As the shadows recoiled, jagged edges of terror surrounded them both, a visceral reminder that the fight for Ethan's safety might come at an unbearable price. And just when she thought freedom was within reach, the shadows released a chilling promise. Let the truth reveal itself or lose him forever. Ethan's eyes, filled with innocent fear, locked onto hers. She had to decide now. Could she bare her truth to save him, or would the darkness swallow them both? As the light fought against the encroaching shadows, a question slithered into her mind: what was hidden within the box waiting to be unleashed, and would the revelation set them free or doom them forever? The tremors jolted Jenna back to reality, her pulse racing as fear gripped her heart. The box pulsated, throbbing with an energy that felt like it might tear her apart. "Ethan!" she cried again, her voice hoarse and desperate. She could barely hear her own words amid the cacophony of shrieks that echoed, rising and falling like a windstorm. Around her, shadows writhed, inching closer, clawing for her. It was like a hungry mob, searching for something to devour. The temperature plummeted. Breath fogged in front of her, the icy chill sneaking beneath her skin. "Mommy!" Ethan's voice pierced the chaos, so close, yet so agonizingly far. Her son stood at the edge of the light, a fragile beacon in a sea of despair. His wide, terrified eyes locked onto hers, grounding her amidst the turmoil. Jenna fixed her gaze on him, determination surging within her. "I'm coming!" she shouted, leaning into the light. But as she pushed forward, the shadows surged back, roaring with anger, their whispers rising to a deafening crescendo. "You cannot save him. Your grief will consume you." The very walls appeared to vibrate with their fury, causing Jenna to stagger. She fought against the vortex, images flooding her mind like a dizzying slideshow. Her sister's laughter, once a melody of joy, now twisted into mockery, blending with the anguished cries of those trapped in the darkness. With new resolve, Jenna took a step forward, feeling the cool surface of the box beneath her hand. It pulsed, almost alive, radiating with a fierce, chaotic energy that threatened to swallow her whole. "I will not lose him." The words came through gritted teeth, echoing back the strength she was trying to reclaim. Suddenly, she grasped the box tightly, and with a deep breath, she forced the memories to the forefront. Both the joy and the sorrow, the tears of laughter and the shattering disappointment. "You don't own me," She yelled at the shadows, feeling power surge through her veins. You are just echoes of my past. The shadows recoiled, hissing and snapping as sparks flew from the box. Jenna's heart raced. This was what they feared. She could almost feel their presence shift, their rage entwining with fear, simmering beneath the surface. She closed her eyes, releasing every painful memory she had buried deep, exposing herself completely. A visceral shriek erupted, shaking the space around her. The light surged brighter, breaking through the veil of shadows, revealing glimpses of those trapped. Faces distorted by grief and anger. She recognized them from her past, each a piece of her life that had once meant something. The deeper the light grew, the more desperate the shadows became. Embrace your pain. A voice thundered, twisting through the air. Only then can you achieve freedom. The shadows lunged, clawing at Jenna's mind, whispering serpentine lies that slithered into her ears. You will lose everything. But as Ethan called out to her, panic and hope mingling in his innocent plea, Jenna chose. The box shone like the sun, illuminating the space, casting away the figures of despair. She reached inside, feeling the very essence of her fears, her grief, and her failures swirl around her like a tempest. And just when it seemed the light would stifle out, she uncovered a hidden truth, a small, pulsing heart that throbbed within the cold, chaotic mass. It felt like a soul, tethered to her, connected to the swirling shadows, a link to everything she'd lost. No! She gasped, her realization shattering the air. You can't be a part of me any longer. With a surge of raw emotion, she grasped the heart and pulled. A scream erupted from the shadows, a cacophony of anger and sorrow that shook her to the core. It was the culmination of every heartbreak, every betrayal. She felt that this massive shadow was not only a reflection of her sister's pain but of her own burdens. The darkness roared one final time, sorrow querying through it, clawing at her. The light exploded around her, scattering pieces of the shadows as they splintered away like glass under pressure, but the peace was short-lived. Amidst the scattering darkness, something dark slithered away, whispering promises of retribution. Your truth may save him, but retribution has a price. Fingers trembling, Jenna turned to Ethan, breath held tight in her chest. What have I done? As she faced her son, the shadows writhed as if waiting, poised for their chance to strike back. Was this her true salvation or merely the beginning of something far worse? The weight of her choice hung heavy in the air, and with it, a chilling question lingered. What other horrors had she unleashed in her desperate bid for salvation? Jenna's heart raced, reverberating painfully against her ribs. She felt the box tremble in her grip, an uneasy pulsing that matched her frantic heartbeat. Ethan? She searched his eyes wide, confused, but alive. Her son was there, bathed in the fragile glow of the light she conjured, yet shadows still clawed at the edges, drawn towards the fear radiating from her. The air thickened, charged with a new tension. She could sense it, the same twisted energy that had once belonged to her sister, now trapped within this malevolent darkness. And it was hungry. The softly echoing laughter morphed into a chilling symphony of her family's anguish, raking through her mind, assuring her that the past was far from buried. Something deep within the shadows stirred, their whispered threats mingling with a sinister promise. You think you've freed yourself? We're just getting started. The words ensnared her, echoing with memories she had hoped to escape. Get behind me! Jenna shouted to Ethan, who took a hesitant step back, eyes darting. She could see his fear, more palpable than the darkness swirling around them. The shadows shifted, assimilating into streams of darkness that licked at her ankles. Mommy! Panic surged like ice in her veins. She tightened her grip on the box, willing it to maintain its glow. Stay with me. She could feel something clawing at her inside, her grief, her regrets, her failures all slithering back in unison with the shadows. New chills crept along her arms, and the room darkened even further, plunging her into a claustrophobic space. You can't win, a faint voice hissed, syrupy and sweet. Not against us. Ethan's hands trembled at his sides. In his small, innocent world, shadows were not just creatures of nightmares, they were the monsters under the bed, the sounds that whispered through the dark corners of his life. To him, they were as real as the fear spreading across Jenna's face. "Mommy, it's so cold," he whispered. Jenna immediately felt the temperature plunge further, a sinister wind whipping through, wrapping around her throat like an icy noose. She desperately scanned the surroundings for an escape. The shadows grew denser, pulsating like a living entity, each movement drawing in the despair she had fought against all her life, but something flickered in her mind, the heart she had just freed, in the core of the chaotic pulse of the box. A wild idea sparked to life: if there was darkness here, there had to be light somewhere, too. With a deep breath, Jenna focused. "Leave us alone." The words burst forth, laced with rage and fear. "You'll never take him from me." The shadows momentarily hesitated, recoiling like a wounded beast. Their whispers turned into shrieks, their shape twisted, contorting, revealing figures from her memories, taunting her with long-lost voices. Suddenly, every shadow merged into her sister's face, distorted, a sickening smirk on lips that once held kindness. The temptation to give into despair surged. "Your pain is all that binds you," it crooned, Eddie's voice oozing regret and disdain. "Join us. Let the darkness take you too." Jenna felt an urge to crumble, to let the walls close in. But then she felt Ethan's hand grabbing her leg, the warmth grounding her. "Mommy, don't listen." He looked up, trust shining in his terrified eyes. A fierce defiance rose within her. "No!" She screamed again, louder this time, shaking with certainty. "You will not win." She reached into the box, feeling that pulsing heart again, and closed her eyes. This time, she wouldn't just confront them, she would summon every ounce of love she held for Ethan, every cherished memory. The light brightened in her mind, searing through the dismal shadows, illuminating them for what they truly were: fear. In one swift motion, she channeled the light, an explosion of brilliant radiance that echoed her heart's determination. As it surged outward, the shadows reeled, hissing like boiling water, but their cries grew weak against her light. But just as the shadows receded, something else burst forth: a massive entity formed from their collective anger, a swirling cloak of darkness, seething and writhing like an infernal storm. The air thickened, suffocating her breath. What had she awakened? The shadow loomed closer, consuming the light she had fought so hard to create. Jenna felt her resolve flicker, panic tightening its grip. She had pushed them back, but now, the true force of resentment surged forth, ready to unleash its vengeance. "Ethan, run!" she yelled, panic coursing. Something terrible was coming, and she had unleashed an entire storm of horrors. As Ethan turned, shadows surged closer, clawing for the boy who was still caught in the crossfire. Would her bravery hold against the malevolence she had evoked? Or had her bid for freedom only set the stage for a darker confrontation? The room trembled, the pulsating darkness swirling aggressively, a force of pure rage. Jenna felt the icy tendrils reaching for Ethan, howling with the anguish of the lost. She couldn't breathe. Fear twisted within her gut like a knife, every instinct screaming at her to protect her son. "Ethan, no!" she cried, desperation fueling her voice as she ran toward him. "Grab my hand." In that moment, clarity pulsed through her. She was not going to let the darkness win. Outside, the snow fell softly, a stark contrast to the chaos within. The spark of hope ignited within her, reminding her of all the moments that made life beautiful: Christmas echoes, laughter, love. Summoning every ounce of strength, she gripped the box, feeling the residual warmth within her soul reverberating against the chilling shadows. "Enough!" Jenna shouted, her voice cutting through the cacophony like a beacon. She could feel the shadows recoiling slightly, a flicker of doubt sparking amidst their rage. This was her moment. She wouldn't fold. She could face her demons and save her son. "Go back!" she screamed, channeling all her love, determination, and raw grief into one concentrated force. As the shadows threatened to envelop them, she envisioned the shimmering light of her memories. The warmth of her sister's laughter, those sweet, innocent moments they once shared. You will not take him. She focused, eyes fixated on Ethan. Stay with me, baby. We're stronger than this. With that thought circling fiercely within her mind, she plunged her hands into the box, reaching toward that pulsing heart. The very core of everything she felt the joy and the pain entwined. As they connected, the shadows roared, their displeasure crackling in the air, echoing sorrow and betrayal. Suddenly, a blinding light erupted from her heart, radiating warmth around them. It was not just her love, it was forgiveness, a wish to heal, a promise to reclaim her past and release it. The darkness tried to seize it, but the light bound them, forcing it back with every single memory of love Jenna had held dear. You are nothing but pain. Jenna shouted, her voice surging as the light grew more powerful. You will not take my son. You can't have our love. With that declaration, the shadows writhed in sheer agony. They spiraled, twisting amidst the light, their cries echoing louder than ever, whispering of the power they once held. The room began shaking violently as Jenna confronted the storm, bracing herself. She could see the darkness morphing now, her sister's face once again, twisted with anguish and ire, but behind it, an unmistakable flicker of recognition. But we lost everything. It hissed, the voice now layered with confusion. Within the shadows, anger, desperation began to seep through. Things were changing. Had Jenna struck a nerve? I lost you, Jenna countered, her heart racing. But I never forgot. You are loved, and you are free to let go of all this pain. The room brightened, the oppressive weight lightening slightly as she took another step forward, defiance surging through her veins. In that tumultuous moment, Jenna felt Ethan beside her, heart pounding, but a confidence building in his small frame. Mommy, I'm scared, he whispered, but she could hear a glimmer of courage in his voice too. He would not back down. They were unified. As the shadows writhed angrily, their faces shifting between agonized silhouettes, Jenna raised her hands again, now drawing from the strength of their shared history. Together. She rallied, their love empowering her. Join us. The shadows hesitated as Jenna's indomitable spirit ignited the surge of light within the box, causing it to explode in a burst of purifying energy. The darker forms writhed, caught now on the fringes of realization, the victory of Jenna's unwavering love forcing a shift. Let us go. They shrieked, revealing glimmers of regret as they recoiled away from that pure essence. Jenna felt a relief wash over her, a promise that this struggle did not define them, but merely shaped the journey ahead. The blinding radiance engulfed the room, illuminating every crevice, scattering the shadows until they dissipated into the ether, leaving only the light that blossomed with warmth. The overwhelming fear was gone, only love permeated the space. As the echoes of darkness faded into the depths of the night, Jenna looked around, her heart soaring. She had saved Ethan. The memories of pain were still there, but they would no longer rule her. She had fought for him, fought for a future unfettered by the past. Jenna turned, eyes locked onto her son now enveloped by glowing light. He stood there, iridescent against the aftermath of their battle. Tentative at first, a grin spread across his face, bright as the dawn. Mommy. You did it. I did, she replied, pulling him into her embrace. We did. The once menacing shadows had faded to reveal a quiet calm, the snow outside glistening in the winter moonlight. It was morning, Christmas morning, the dawn of a new beginning. Together they emerged from the remnants of fear and darkness, stepping toward the future with hope in their hearts, and as they held each other close, the world outside waited, wrapped in the blanket of fresh snow, untouched and pure, with the promise of brighter days ahead. If you've made it this far, I need you to subscribe immediately. Don't wait even one more second, hit that notification bell to be the first to watch our next exclusive stories. Smash that like button now to feed the algorithm and help us spread more tales like this. And remember to flood the comments section with your reactions and theories about this ending. Your voice matters. Share this video with at least 5 friends who need this conclusion in their lives, and let us keep the chilling stories alive together. Your support is everything.